टोपैज और सुपरमैक्स कैसे बनने में आया?
Number one by volume was Topaz and Supermax blades. These two brands brought to you from the Malhotras. Shaving blade product in India.
Right.
You would see it everywhere, used by everyone. So technical that nobody else can compete with me. That's number one.
How is that different from one international players के हिसाब से?
बहुत ही difficult है. Processes बढ़ते जाते हैं
Right.
और बढ़ते गए. To keep up with that is no easy task.
कैसे टाइप का प्रेशर उनके तरफ से आता है when they know that there's somebody who's trying to create एक local brand?
बहुत ही कोशिश किया उन्होंने. They offered a very fat sum of money, who was the head of Gillette India at the time, and he was running this whole exercise.
So then what happened after that?
एक कंटेनर गया था जो ऑलरेडी पहुंच गया था दुबई. Gillette was going to shut them down. That would be the plan. They would
Obviously.
keep India and they would shut out. They actually blocked that.
Hi, Reenita Malhotra Hora, and welcome Expert Talk with Bhavya Desai पे. काफ़ी एक्साइटेड हूँ मैं आज के कॉन्वर्सेशन के लिए बिकॉज हम आत्मनिर्भरता के बारे में बात करते हैं एंड वो जो आत्मनिर्भरता का पूरा स्लोगन टाइप है वो लास्ट लाइक 5 या 6 साल में आया है बट बहुत सारे लोगों को ये बात पता नहीं होगी जैसे मुझे भी पता नहीं थी कि एक आत्मनिर्भर कंपनी जो ऑलमोस्ट 50-60 से लेके 90s 2000s तक उसने डोमिनेट किया शेविंग ब्लेड की इंडस्ट्री को एंड इतना डोमिनेट किया कि इंटरनेशनल कंपनीज जैसी जिलेट वो भी आके उनको अक्वायर करने की उन्होंने कोशिश की. दे ट्राई टू रन यू गाइस आउट ऑफ बिजनेस एज वेल जो आपके ऑफ कोर्स फादर की कंपनी थी
जी.
सो इसीलिए बहुत ही एक्साइटिंग कॉन्वर्सेशन है मेरे लिए. सो वेलकम फर्स्टली.
थैंक यू भव्य, थैंक यू सो मच. मैं बहुत खुश हूँ कि आप आज मुझे बुलाए अपने पॉडकास्ट पर और मैं इस सब्जेक्ट पर बात कर सकती हूँ. एस ऑफ ब्लेड्स जो मेरे लिए बहुत ही पर्सनल भी है लेकिन मेरे ख्याल से इस देश की इतिहास के लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है.
राइट, एब्सोल्युटली ग्रेट. सो पहले मतलब मैं चाहता हूँ कि बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग ये बात है कि एक इंटरनेशनल ब्रांड जो इतना रिकग्नाइज्ड ब्रांड है वो अगर इन एनी स्पेयर और एनी इंडस्ट्री अगर वो आके कोई भी दूसरे इंडियन ब्रांड को अक्वायर करना चाहता है या उसमें स्टेक खरीदना चाहता है सो दैट ओनली स्पीक्स वॉल्यूम अबाउट द बिजनेस, द क्वालिटी एंड द लेगेसी दैट यू हैव. आई थिंक वो एक बात बहुत क्लियर एंड एस्टेब्लिश होती है कोई भी इंडस्ट्री में, चाहे वो शेविंग ब्लेड्स की इंडस्ट्री में हो. तो वो पहलू पे मैं पहुंचने से पहले बिकॉज मुझे लगता है उसके बारे में भी बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी होगी. मैं चाहता हूँ कि थोड़ा सा दर्शकों को आप ओवरव्यू दे दे इंडस्ट्री के बारे में और कंपनी के बारे में क्योंकि तभी के टाइम पे जब सुपरमैक्स और टोपैज काफी रूल कर रहा था इंडस्ट्री को तो तभी का माहौल कैसा था?
जी बिल्कुल. देखिए ब्रांड्स जो है जो आप जानते हैं टोपैज सुपरमैक्स मतलब लेटली लास्ट सेवरल इयर्स में यही ब्रांड्स जो थे सब लोग पहचानते थे लेकिन उसके पहले भी अशोक स्टेनलेस, भारत, जोरिक ये सभी ब्रांड्स होते थे ब्लेड्स के और ज्यादातर डबल एज रेजर जो ट्रेडिशनल बार्बर रेजर है. यही ब्लेड यही प्रोडक्ट जो है is the number one used blade in the Indian market तब भी और अभी भी. मतलब अभी तो है मार्केट में twin track shaving systems, quadruple razors, triple razors, etc.
Right.
But the number one used blade still is the double-edged blade which the barbers use. और अगर देश से बाहर जाए भी same क्योंकि the Middle Eastern and Africa market is the biggest consumer of these blades. जब हर साल जब लोग मदीना जाते हैं, हज जाते हैं, मक्का जाते हैं तो वो शेविंग करते हैं.
Oh, okay.
Which is why if you look at the history of shaving, number one in the world by price has always been Gillette.
Okay.
But number one by volume was Topaz and Supermax blades. These two brands brought to you from the Malhotras.
Understand, right. Interesting बात आपने ये बोली तो that means just for the picture of the people as well थोड़े दर्शकों को बता दूं कि जो बार्बर शॉप्स में बेसिकली जो ब्लेड्स यूज होती हैं, जिसे यूजुअली हम लोग वो उस ट्रे में डाल के उसे तोड़ के दे यूज दैट दोज आर द ब्लेड्स दैट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट.
Absolutely, and those were the blades that my father, the late R.K. Malhotra, the ace of blades, was focused on. That was the one love of his life.
Understand. So when you say double edge, what does that mean?
Means that is the blade, the barber blade, जो
Okay.
उस तरह में डालते हैं उसको मतलब टूट कर
Okay, so both
इस्तेमाल
sides.
करते हैं. बिल्कुल, the two sides are the double edges.
Understand, right. And ये जो थे वो targeted basically किसको थे? Was it majorly into barber shops or even general consumers were also interested in this?
दोनों. Because that is the one kind of blade जो आज अभी तक will give you the perfect shave. The closest cut, closest edge is that.
Understand.
So again, dual target to the barber shops, also to the general public.
Understand. आपने overview थोड़ा सा idea दिया. Can you tell us a little bit more about as well कि already आपने बोला starting में कि थोड़े brands already present थे.
बिल्कुल.
तो उसके हिसाब से Topaz और Supermax कैसे बनने में आया?
बिल्कुल. So 1950s, 1960s को इस period को अगर आप देखिए तो we are now post independence. There is an emphasis on consumer products में building स्वदेशी companies.
Okay.
लेकिन government जो थे they did not know how to deal with consumer products. तो इसलिए उन्होंने कहा कि चलो business houses या entrepreneurs आप ये जिम्मेदारी ले लो अपने हाथों में, you build these, but we are going to control you through licenses, so license Raj, which we know about, right? तो उस वक्त actually right at partition there were only foreign brands.
Okay.
Wilkinson, Sword, Gillette, Bic also at the time, Schick at the time, not Bic. These were all foreign brands.
Right.
But the government wanted to promote this Swadeshi home industry. So, matlab, pehla Indian player was actually a gentleman called Dilip Dhanukar, who started Hind Blades. He was actually the first into the market. The Malhotras came very quickly on his heels and made sure that they became number one very soon. Actually, unka pehla brand tha Bharat. It was called Bharat.
Okay.
And you can find it, the old red packaging of the double-edged blades. You'll find that somewhere on the internet, I think still. You see, H.L. Malhotra, Harbans Lal Malhotra, जो मेरे grandfather थे, मेरे दादाजी, उन्होंने found किया था एक company called Bharat Construction Company, which was a company that he started to make tents for the army. Now, as you can imagine, World War II के बाद में there was not a whole lot of demand for this. So one thing led to the other. Stories there in the books, but they started making razor blades. और उन्होंने कहा कि I already have this name भारत registered जो बहुत ही स्वदेशी, the perfect स्वदेशी name. तो इस ही brand से हमें अपना blade product बनाना चाहिए. So they started making Bharat blade. उस वक्त blades were made from carbon steel. Carbon steel is a lower quality steel than what we use today, stainless steel. But India had not started any stainless steel blade products yet. So the Malhotras were keen के चलो शुरू से अभी हम carbon steel से चालू करेंगे, but we must get to building a stainless steel product very soon. So Bharat blade से उन्होंने शुरू किया. From there that led to Ashok stainless, which was the very, very first stainless steel product. Before Ashok, they took the franchise for Panama, which was a German brand, and to use the name just to gain recognition in the market, in the Indian market. So Ashok Stainless comes along in the late 60s as the very first stainless steel product, which you could say was मतलब उनका test case. तो उसके बाद ही उन्होंने सोच लिया कि we need to now establish a premium product at a higher price in the market. Ashok was targeted at 1 rupee for the masses. So in 1970, you see the birth of Topaz. Right? Topaz was the premium product for the premium market at a higher price. And 1973 tak, it was the #1 shaving blade product in India. You would see it everywhere, used by everyone. You would see it on TV, Chayagi, Chitrahar, in the movie theaters. कि उस ज़माने में they would play ads, before the movies, and many of the उस वक्त में बॉलीवुड तो नहीं बुलाते थे, जस्ट द हिंदी मूवीज, sponsored by Topaz. So it gained recognition very, very quickly. And then uske baad in the 80s, from the mid 80s onwards, you see the birth of Supermax after there was a split in the Malhotra family. And Topaz was kept, matlab the brand, by the elder two brothers, VP and SN Malhotra. And RK Malhotra, jo Bombay aaye the, unki factory the Thane mein, Vidyut Metallics Limited. That began to manufacture Supermax, which became firstly उनका legacy brand, और दूसरी बात then overtook Topaz to become the number one blade brand in India and outside of India, as I said, to the Middle East and African markets primarily, and the largest, the biggest blade brand in the world by volume.
Understand, great. So बहुत सारी चीजें आपने बताई, तो थोड़ा थोड़ा करके मुझे उसे decipher करनी है, because the journey from the first one, जैसे आप बता रहे हैं कार्बन स्टील के हिसाब से, can we just talk about manufacturing as well?
Absolutely.
Because I think बहुत सारे दर्शकों को भी, एक्चुअली मुझे भी जानना है, मुझे भी आइडिया नहीं है कि यूजुअली ये ब्लेड जो होती है, शेविंग ब्लेड, ये मैन्युफैक्चर कैसे होती है? Is there something unique or different, or how can you explain that?
There is something very unique, very different. It is a highly technical product. Okay. So raw material जो है comes from strip steel, razor blade strip, which needs to be rolled down into very specific millimetric width and thickness जो है. So first it starts with a hot rolling process, which, you know, rolls the strip steel to a certain thickness, then a cold rolling process, which then further rolls it to the exact thickness that is needed for it to become the raw material for razor blade steel. So these are the preliminary processes. Uske baad it goes through an exorbitant processing, punching, sharpening, honing, sputtering, jahan, you know, with silicone and other materials, it sputters the blade to give it the edge, to give it the tone, to give it the sharpness. वो quality जो है, but still in terms of safety, and then safety testing also. And then it's actually split and, you know, packaged. So it's quite an exorbitant process, very technical, very mechanical. अभी मल्होत्रा family में engineers नहीं थे. Traditional family system है, पंजाबी families जो कलकत्ते से शुरू हुए अपना मतलब life, अपना business, और VP Malhotra, who is the eldest child of Harbans Lal, was the karta of the family. Lekin he was not an engineer. SN, younger brother, also not an engineer. And SN did pick up a lot in terms of the legal, the marketing, you know, these areas. So, you know, which he then took ownership of later on and controlled. But he was not an engineer. So Harbans Lal ne kaha ke RK, who was at that point ready to go to college, he said, chalo, abhi aap jaoge Loughborough College, England, and you will study mechanical engineering, or aap ban jaoge is family ki engineer, and you will start this business. So RK's philosophy was this. उन्होंने हमेशा ऐसे सोच लिया कि मेरा product जो भी होगा must be so technical that nobody else can compete with me. That's number one. Secondly, I don't want to make high quality, high priced for certain sectors of the market, जैसे Gillette किया करते थे, or Schick, Bic, the other international players at the time. उन्होंने कहा, this is a country which has the largest number of men, not in the world at that point, but that's the way it's going and growing. That's what it looks like. I want to make sure कि मेरा जो product है reaches every single Indian man. For that, it must be at the lowest possible price, but it must be the highest quality product. तो इसको कैसे achieve कर सकते हैं, right? Lowest possible price, highest possible quality. तो उन्होंने सोचा, in order to achieve that, I need to look into vertical engineering. I need to make sure that I make not just the product, but वो machinery जो है, जो blades को बनाते हैं, I must control that process. तो उनके factories में होते थे tool rooms, machine shops where he would actually build the machines. And he said, I must also control the raw material. So the steel processing, jo maine kaha pehle, the cold rolling process, the hot rolling process. So he built steel mills, what we call rolling mills, and he incorporated them into, if not the same factories, then adjunct processing units, where he would then create. Now later on, in later years, Jindal Steel बनाते थे और अभी भी बनाते हैं. They are the major suppliers, in fact, in India of steel strip for razor blades. But their very first rolling mills, RK put together. RK trained them because RK had a need. In fact, he had a need for steel beyond his own rolling mills. So this is the sheer genius of the man, and the highly technical nature of this product, and why it was so important to control every step of the manufacturing and vertical integration to get
because also usually for engineers hain, to engineers think also in the specific manner because they want the optimal quality out of that product as well. Very interesting. So तभी के time पे जैसे बोल रहे हैं आपके जो machinery थी, tooling जो थी, that was kind of like done by him. How is that different from one international usually players के हिसाब से? Meaning were they doing, or आज के तारीख में भी lot of it is done still tooling by hand, or now it's all machinery?
It is all machinery, and us वक्त भी a lot of it, I mean, it of course started off by hand, but then it was very quickly mechanized. Abhi RK jo the, he had, like I said, he had studied abroad in his earlier days, Loughborough College. So unka exposure tha to the foreign brands. Gillette, Wilkinson, Sword, Schick, Bic, you know, all of these players. So especially because he spent a lot of time in England and Europe, but he was very familiar with and had exposure to the teams at Wilkinson Sword. तो उनका strategy क्या था कि he would hire people initially as consultants and उसके बाद as full-on employees from Wilkinson Sword to design his factories, design those tool rooms, design and build the machinery and bring that technology transfer to his Indian employees, engineering employees, who he would hire from, you know, across the country. In fact, that's one of the reasons he shifted from Calcutta to Mumbai. He found that Calcutta or West Bengal mein, there was not a lot of reliable engineering talent at the time. Lekin Mumbai mein, this was the land of engineers, jahan log the, jahan log dusri jagah se aana chahte the to build their life, to build their career. So this was a primary reason also for him to shift. And he hired a lot of, as I say, British engineers, mostly from Wilkinson Sword, other companies also, but mostly from Wilkinson Sword. और उनको station दिया उन्होंने Mumbai में, in the factories around here, Mumbai and Hyderabad also later on, to basically build this enterprise.
So meaning what you're trying to say is कि उन्होंने processes basically ऐसे design किए so that you can meticulously get the best output out of that product. Okay. One thing मेरे दिमाग में हमेशा काफी time से आया है, and when you're saying, it's kind of striking me as well. Is it true that usually a lot of the shaving blades that they provide, or they're made, the angles and all of these things are also need to be in a very specific manner for it to give optimal shave?
Very specific. Great question. And this is what I mean by it is such a technical product, and it has been improving and improving over the course of years, because the angles and the coating on that part of the blade, the sharpness, really controls the quality. It controls how close of a shave you can get without cutting your skin, right? The sputtering and the coating process also control the rust factor.
Oh, okay.
As does the quality of the steel. So in this case, stainless steel rusts. You know, in the early days, I had mentioned they used to use carbon steel. So वो fairly quickly rust होता था. जो stainless steel इतना जल्दी rust नहीं होता है. But beyond that, it's the coating and the sputtering. So there are all these different factors that come into play, but that need to work with that very, very specific kind of angle. Because again, when you're looking at your face, it's not just one plane, right? There's a curvature. And your curvature is different from my curvature, is different from somebody else's curvature. The shapes of our faces are different.
Generalize and make
Exactly.
something interesting. ये कोटिंग जो आप बोल रहे हो तो क्या टाइप की कोटिंग्स यूजुअली डालते थे and what was so unique about them?
Silicon coatings.
Oh.
Silicon coatings जो पहले नहीं होते थे silicon coatings, but then that was like a later, in the later years, through study of the foreign brands, again, Gillette, Wilkinson, Schick, that's where this know-how came about.
So ये silicon coating जो आप बोल रहे हो, is that on like the razor blade जो blade के ऊपर आता है ऐसा blue color का, or is it like on the tip?
On the tip.
On the tip?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That must be requiring some precise tooling and machinery.
बिल्कुल.
इतने पतले से इसमें डालना.
पतले से, because on the rest of the blade, that part doesn't touch the skin.
Okay.
So to apply the coating there would just be a waste of the raw material.
Okay.
So,
very interesting. Actually, ये मेरे दिमाग में और इतने सारे questions आ रहे हैं because actually I am also someone who likes all this a lot and also tries to understand every industry. तो इसीलिए ये सब question मेरे दिमाग में आ रहे हैं. But so normally जैसे आपने बोला ये sheet होती है and then from that sheet the blades basically get made. So are they like punched into it off the top and then at the end it gets cut?
Yes, exactly. So it's a thin strip and they are punched into the shape. So if you look at that strip coming off a machine line, it's like a conveyor belt. Jaise, kind of, and you'll see the strip has now been punched into the shape of that double-edged blade, and then it's slit. There's a slitting machine,
right,
which you use for the slitting process. Then,
wow, so interesting. Okay, let's move on to the aspect of innovation, right? I think आपने बताया बीच में कभी तो कि because of the engineering talent that of course your father had, you wanted the best product, but how difficult है, कितना difficult है ये industry में innovate करना?
बहुत ही difficult है क्योंकि already हमने actually बातें किया कि इतना ही technical है और innovation के लिए मतलब processes बढ़ते जाते हैं और बढ़ते गए, over the years. So for for anyone to keep up with that is no easy task, RK made it his business and RK knew कि खुद ही can't keep up with it, which is why he really relied on the top engineering talent, and he would scout this talent from far and wide across the world, no holds barred, bring them to India, because he was very much of the mindset कि we started out talking about Atmanirbharta and Atmanirbhar companies. This was his mindset. As a young man, he had the opportunity to actually stay abroad, and he was, I'll tell you an interesting story, poached by Helena Rubinstein, who was a cosmetics queen growing at the time. The race was कि Helena Rubinstein company and Elizabeth Arden, which one of these is going to make it tomorrow? She had married somebody who, through that marriage, had acquired a male grooming
company
business line.
Right.
And she was very interested in the Indian market, and she had poached RK thinking that this is going to be my entry into the Indian market. But when I say male grooming, it was more shaving creams and those kinds of things. RK said no thank you. Pehle to he's a traditionalist and wanted to come back, but B, he really got the view that cosmetics were a weak product. Hamesha bolte the, when it comes to lipstick, powder and paint, it's mixing a formula. कोई भी कर सकता है, okay? Nani's recipe and Dadi's recipe, it's the same thing. थोड़ा change होने वाला है. I can't control that. I can't control that. He did not believe that, जैसे हम बोलते हैं, the Coke formula is so secret, right? So he said, cosmetics is a weak product. I need to have a strong product. The only way to have a strong product is to have a technical product, which is what he did. But then with that comes this constant need to innovate, जो आप बोल रहे हैं, and really keeping up with the times, knowing that you can't do it yourself, and you really rely on the talent and the innovation to come from elsewhere over time, and that's what he made his business.
You mentioned, आपने बोला कि तभी के time पे already a lot of international players were there. Gillette was there, Wilkinson's was there, XYZ. कैसे type का pressure basically उनके तरफ से आता है when they know that there's somebody who's trying to create एक local brand, and naturally वो local brand will always be undercutting them in terms of price because of obvious reasons.
My gosh, the pressure. Right? So there was a lot of consolidation in the industry, in the global industry of razor blades overall.
Right.
Wilkinson Sword was the top British company जो Gillette ने acquire किया over time.
Right.
Schick also was eventually acquired. Schick started off German. Swing Blade was another German company जो in the 50s, 60s, Indo Swing in Hyderabad had a collaboration with Swing Blades abroad. Indo Swing was acquired by the Malhotra Group.
Okay.
So consolidation happened India mein bhi aur bahar bhi. Okay. Gillette's foray into India was through a collaboration with the Podars. They had a blade called 7 o'clock, which for the longest time was his joint venture. Right? Podars eventually left the business, and then Gillette tried to come in to sort of wholly own their, wholly establish themselves in India. So उस वक्त they were very keen to acquire the Malhotra group of companies. लेकिन उनके मन में थोड़ा confusion था कि Malhotras कौन है? Actually काफी बहुत सारे brands हैं. By that time Topaz was less. It was less or practically defunct. But the Topaz as a brand had been acquired by the elder brothers, VP and SN Malhotra. Right. Their brands at that time were Lancer, Gallant. These were the brands out there versus Supermax, which was RK's main brand.
Right.
तो Gillette को पहले ही मालूम ही नहीं था कि ये मल्होत्रा सेपरेट है, सेपरेट नहीं है, एक ग्रुप है, दो ग्रुप है, ये सब. जब उनको मालूम हुआ, then they went after both.
I understand.
Okay, because it was not about the brands, to be honest. It was about the blades and their distribution and their presence in the markets. And Malhotras क्या किया करते थे? They used to use different brands. These ones that I have mentioned are the ones that people most know, right? But for example, in RK's time, when Supermax was the stronghold of the market, it was very strong. There was a 5-zone marketing system: central, north, east, south, west. Okay, and Supermax was very strong central, west, south में. But north and primarily east, Supermax was not so strong, but another one of RK's brands called Zoric was very strong.
Under a different brand.
Yeah. Under a different brand. You can say same or similar product, but different brand. तो जो ही ब्रांड चलेगा मार्केट में उसी ब्रांड पर फोकस और ध्यान देना चाहिए. दिस वाज आरके's belief. So Gillette got to understand this. तो पहले they tried to negotiate with all of the Malhotras. When they realized that there are two groups, then they went deep into which one should we acquire.
Right.
And they came to the conclusion that it was RK's organization that they wanted to acquire. तो बहुत ही कोशिश किया उन्होंने. They offered a very fat sum of money, if I will say so. And I did a deep research with Brandy Gill, who was the head of Gillette India at the time, and he was running this whole exercise. And RK, interestingly enough, was very keen at that point to sell. No matter जितना भी success उन्होंने देखा, he was always struggling with cash flow, business problems. उनका main factory जो थाने में था was actually not a factory, it was an R&D center.
Okay.
What is the difference? The difference is the license you are going to get to produce to the capacity you need to produce to be number one in the market.
Right.
इसलिए he also had other factories he had begun to build in Hyderabad initially and then later on in North India, जहाँ भी incentives मिले from the government for manufacturing. But it was always a struggle. And RK did a certain kind of jugad himself. You know, he made his own decisions and he said, okay, if I can't produce beyond this capacity, I'm just going to produce, put my products on a container, send them abroad. Who's going to stop me? Because that brings foreign exchange, you know, to this country. This is what the country needs.
Right.
So he would do crazy things like this. But Gillette ne kaha, we want Supermax and the RK organization. But Gillette ka MO kya tha? They wanted it for the Indian presence.
Okay.
Even though it was number one outside of India and the Middle East and Africa market specifically, they didn't necessarily need that because they were number one elsewhere in the world. So their whole idea is, we want it for the Indian distribution, we will take it over and we will, absorb their foreign operations into what we already do.
Understand.
RK's family, not his family of origin, not his brothers, but his nuclear family at this point didn't agree with this.
Right.
They didn't want this.
Before we go to that, I actually want to kind of just bring
हाँ
you
जी.
back to the कि जब ये split भी हुआ brothers के बीच में, तो what was the reason? The reason was basically to go with different ideology, different businesses. What was the scene?
Different, बिल्कुल. Punjabi business family. Unfortunately, I don't know why we do this. Different
Right.
ideologies, and it's always a fight for succession and assets. In very simple words, there were three brothers, VP, SN, and RK.
Right.
For reasons which I won't go into, in depth.
That's fine.
But
We understand.
VP and SN had one male heir between them,
Okay.
and RK had two sons. So two male heirs. So when it came to HL Malhotra, the grandfather's three-way assets that needed to be split three ways, once it came down to the grandchildren's generation, his grandchildren,
Only two.
there were 2/3, 1/3, and this 1/3 to be split 1/6, 1/6, then 2/3 with this one grandchild over here.
Right.
That, in a nutshell, was the start of ideological differences
Right.
and family split. Now, what happened was not very wise, because there wasn't a clear split of assets in terms of brand assets.
Understand.
There was a split of factories. So in the 1980s, you had factories in Calcutta जो Topaz brand बना रहे थे, and Mumbai, Thane actually also making Topaz, and some in Hyderabad also making Topaz. So how do you, HL Malhotra decided that elder brothers, VP and SN, are going to take Calcutta factories and a certain Hyderabad factory. RK, aap loge another Hyderabad land which you can develop into your own factory, and you're going to take this Thane.
Right.
Now, all of them are manufacturing Topaz, so RK ne naturally पूछा तो अभी क्या होने वाला है? So HL had said, don't worry, they will manufacture Topaz, you will manufacture Topaz, and you have rights to manufacture Topaz for the rest of your life. तो RK पहले तो थोड़ा फिक्र लगा उनको. He went to see lawyers. Is this possible? Lawyers ने कहा, don't worry, Mr. Malhotra, आप ये बिल्कुल सही बात है. आपके मरते दम तक आप Topaz manufacture कर सकते हैं. This was not to be, because this doesn't happen, So
unless it's on paper.
Well, there's a very interesting chapter मेरे किताब में called the Wobbly MOU.
Oh, please tell us.
The agreement was made on a blank piece of paper. Not even, kind of like a napkin deal that you would do, napkin contracts,
Right.
जो restaurants में होते. Not exactly, but very similar. RK was not good with legalities. He recognized this over the course of years. After his passing, I understood finally that maybe that was the reason why he pushed so strongly for some of his children, including me, to study law, because that was his own area of weakness. And he would go into the courts and represent himself. Very strong man, but, thinking I can do everything.
Right.
Not necessarily the best idea. Topaz, for a while, before Supermax started and took off, there were two Topazes in the market. Kolkata Topaz, made by VP and SN, and Bombay Topaz, actually made in Thane by RK. तो पहले market में काफी confusion था कि ये दो different quality के Topaz कैसे आए हैं market
But
में.
same branding,
same brand,
everything.
सब कुछ, same brand, same packaging,
Look,
सब कुछ.
exactly. Yeah. Oh.
पहले. लेकिन two distinctly different qualities.
Right.
And the Thane one was the top quality because that's where the mechanical engineer went. Remember? तो RK ने क्या सोचा, क्या जुगाड़ उन्होंने किया? उन्होंने कहा मेरा कंपनी जो है, थाने वाला कंपनी, उसका नाम है विद्युत मेटालिक्स लिमिटेड. तो ये डीलर्स और स्टॉकिस्ट्स और डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स और स्टॉकिस्ट्स जो है मार्केट में, उनको ये मालूम होना है कि विद्युत मेटालिक से जो भी प्रोडक्ट निकलेगा वही सही क्वालिटी का प्रोडक्ट है. तो इसलिए ये टोपाज छोड़ो, मुझे विद्युत का नाम बढ़ाना
Push
चाहिए
करना
मार्केट
चाहिए।
में। तो उन्होंने क्या किया कि जैसे वो पैकेजिंग प्रिंट करते थे, he put the name Vidyut on top of the Topaz logo type, and with each successive printing उन्हें ये विद्युत का फंड बढ़ाया, फिर और बढ़ाया, फिर और बढ़ाया। It was crazy. तो people began to call this Vidyut Topaz. Topaz and Vidyut Topaz. पहले जो Calcutta Topaz, Bombay Topaz, अभी Topaz and Vidyut Topaz. And eventually there was lawsuits and law cases, started with local court, superior court, high court, supreme court, sab kuch, and RK was eventually stripped of his rights to manufacture Topaz. He knew this day was going to come. So what he had already started doing was he had started manufacturing Supermax. Supermax was not initially supposed to be a double-edged blade. Okay. It was supposed to be, being manufactured in Thane as a sandwich blade in the shaving systems.
Oh, okay.
Got it. That was but because he had this brand registered, it was clean, it was under him, it was under his organization. तो उन्होंने कहा, छोड़ दो, I'm going to make Supermax also a double-edged blade. और मेरे जितने सारे Topaz के cartons हैं जो market में जाते हैं रोज, I'm going to inject free Supermax just so the market, the stockists, they can try this. And what seemed to happen overnight, although it wasn't really overnight, but this is the way it seems to us now, at least when you think about it, is eventually RK was stripped of his rights to manufacture Topaz in the courts. एक कंटेनर गया था जो ऑलरेडी पहुंच गया था दुबई. The waters of it had crossed international waters, it had reached Dubai, but it was recalled, which actually is an illegal thing because once goods leave and they enter international waters, they cannot be recalled. Okay. But it was recalled. That container is still today sitting in a factory with yellow tape around it. Wow. Sealed, bonded. God knows what rust is on it. It's like on that today for how many years. And
which year was this?
This would have been 1985.
Wow.
85. 84, 85, somewhere there, mid-80s. And RK's Supermax brand overnight took off. Again, it wasn't really overnight, but that's the way it seems like. And shot up and very quickly became India's #1 blade, which Gillette then wanted to acquire.
Understand. Right. Interesting. I mean, isme bhi, matlab, there is so much to decipher in this conversation as well, because naturally, जब भी succession होता है, a lot of these legacy and all of these things happen, then if there is no clear demarcation, then हमेशा challenges काफी आती हैं from that perspective. But coming to basically then Gillette, as you're mentioning, उन्होंने decide किया कि okay fine, now we want to kind of acquire Vidyut Topaz. So then what happened after that?
So Gillette negotiations started in the early 90s. And I would say that entire decade from 1990 to 2000, this conversation was ongoing with Gillette. A little bit past the millennium also. Gillette offered a very fat sum. RK, as I had mentioned, albeit very successful, had always been struggling with cash flow. He was also, his state of mental health, bipolar. And he was on a low and he was very keen to sell to Gillette. Actually, मुझे याद है मैं कॉलेज में थी उस वक्त and I remember him calling me almost in tears कि मुझे बेचना है, I really need the money, the family, we need to survive. You know, क्या हुआ था, as I mentioned, Gillette was not interested in his international market. They were interested in the Indian market and the Indian distribution. So it was very clear, although hidden perhaps to RK. When I say hidden, he did not know partly because of his mental state and partly because वो क्या करते थे, anything that is international, whether it's export or a conversation or a negotiation about this acquisition, he would leave to the export departments to handle. He would not handle it himself, and this was a big mistake. When it became abundantly clear to them, those people, that Gillette was going to shut them down. That would be the plan. They would keep India and they would shut out. They actually blocked that. I did not realize this until I talked with Brandy Gill, when I was doing the research for my book.
Wow.
And I had a chat with my parents, and they had no clue either. Until I did the research and I talked with Brandy Gill. They were shocked, in fact, to find out.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking 2020
Hmm.
is when they found out. But so that sale was blocked. Gillette actually, उन्होंने क्या किया? They doubled. They offered a very, very fat sum and then they doubled it.
Wow.
And still,
But this was ideally मतलब shut down किया गया internally जो लोग export division देख रहे थे
बिल्कुल.
उन लोग ने.
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल. But
So
this was not
interesting.
discovered until much, much
Of
later.
course. But kids में से कोई भी was never interested in the business.
You know, RK says in his life principles, which in the book, you know, if there's nothing good you can say about someone or something, better not to say it.
Okay, but that's actually a good line. Yeah. But coming to this export part, so जब भी 2020 में जब भी उनको पता चला, so what did they think?
The parents,
Yeah.
RK, and so they were shocked. But see, RK was at a very late stage in his life. In fact, October 2020, when I met him, was the last time I actually ever saw him. So he was very sharp when it came to talking about his business, but then he would forget things, other things, you know. It was too late. The 10 years had already gone because by that time, 2010 was when Actis, UK private equity firm, came in, gave a big cash injection, but then very quickly after that took over the company and RK was out almost weeks after that. He was out.
Okay.
So unke last decade ke liye, for about 10 years of his life, he went into building another blade business, industrial blades, for his son Raju, for and with his son Raju, my brother. In fact, industrial blades business jo thi was the first business that he had actually tried to build before razor blades, but for some reason or the other didn't work out in the 60s, actually in the 50s, late 50s. So 50s and early 60s. So he had gone back to this, but his love was that double-edged blade, and it led to quite a deep depression. So, you know, he was sad and saddened and further saddened, and maybe that further contributed to his decline. But there's nothing he could do at that point because it had long been arrested from his hands.
Right. But coming to the blocking ये Gillette के जो offer की थी, तो how was that blocked by? So technically they were employees, or were they partners in the business, or were they directors?
Partners, directors.
Partners.
They did not allow the sale to happen.
Okay. Which is basically जब भी voting के लिए आता था, they would say no.
Yes. This is a private limited company.
Right.
Or I should say private limited set of companies.
Okay.
Because even though Bahar se agar aap dekhe, it's one organization, there's manufacturing and there's everything is done under separate companies. Right? So whoever is directors or whatever of those companies, I mean, they control, you know, what is said for those companies. Now, what RK had done was, in order to, क्योंकि traditionalist जो है, he said, जो भी बाहर के conversations, even if in this case it's not about exports,
right,
but it's a negotiation with an outsider about acquiring our organization, that must be handled by these out of India people. The factory people will not handle, the people under the factory companies will not, you know, handle these conversations. This was a problem. He should have been handling perhaps those conversations himself, I would argue.
Right.
जो उन्होंने नहीं किया.
Understand. But अगर ये सेल तभी हो जाती, तो क्या बेनिफिट होता सब लोग को?
So benefit यही है कि firstly, I will say later on जो सेल हुआ to Actis, the value that Actis injected in, or the money that they gave, let's say, was much more. But if you look at the time and the amount that had been offered by Gillette and the value of the rupee then, and do the math to bring it up today, it would have been a much heftier sum.
What is that sum? Give or take, ballpark?
Give or take, I can't say. Only because I have been asked not to. It's very tempting. It's very tempting. I did have it in my book and it was edited out.
Okay.
That's one thing. But the other thing, which is very important, certainly to me is the idea of legacy and lasting value. Had Gillette taken over RK's blade organization, you would have seen his blades or the fruit of his effort in the market today. His factories would be in use today. Maybe they would be called Gillette, but that was his goodwill, physical contribution and goodwill combined. That would have been very much present, his legacy in today's shaving India, which you don't see.
Right. What आपके हिसाब से मतलब in this journey, what is the takeaway that an entrepreneur, somebody who's watching this, can take out of this, your father's journey?
So, आज के दुनिया में, I mean, especially in the tech world, I live in California and I'm surrounded by this. You know, it's, let's start this business. Here's my business plan. Here hai hockey curve, you know, estimates for success. Or 5 saal mein I'm going to sell it, or it's going to be acquired, or there'll be an M&A or jo bhi hai. RKs didn't even know how to think like that. Coming from a Marwari sort of business mindset, he grew up in Calcutta. This was his frame of reference. So it was the Parta system. Ki wo daily accounting kya hai? Aaj savere kaise shuru kare? अपना धंधा, शाम तक क्या हुआ, रिपोर्टिंग सिस्टम, एग्जैक्टली, और इस हिसाब से कल क्या करेंगे, which is very much, if you think about it philosophically, it's very much a Hindu Vedic kind of mindset also, right? So this was what, so RK never had 5-year projections and business plans. Now, is that good or is that not good? But RK did believe that you don't walk into a market, you command it. And if you don't have what it takes to command it, then don't bother. He did not believe in brand storytelling and advertising being the fulcrum for the success of any brand. He said you don't start with a weak product, because if you have a weak product, you're never going to be anything but dependent on advertising. Right? Yeah. You need to have a strong product. Whatever it is that you do in life, building houses or whatever, you know, you have to have a strong product jo the next person nahi kar sakta hai, jo next person aapke saath kabhi nahi compete kar sakta hai. That is number one. And then, in order to command the market, you've got to provide it to the masses at the lowest possible price. Which in his case, jo maine kaha tha, he achieved with vertical engineering, controlling every step of the process.
Create value.
To create the value, exactly. And he says, whatever you do, whatever you make, whoever you make it for, that's what you have to do.
Understand. Interesting. Quality-wise, when you actually say, because you're saying about creating value, तो quality में मतलब अगर एक international brand है और एक Indian brand है, तो उसमें क्या फर्क होता है?
तो पहले इंडियन ब्रांड्स जो थे सब कार्बन स्टील से,
बताया वो आपने, फिर स्टेनलेस स्टील में आए,
राइट? तो ये सब प्रोसेसेस जो हैं जिनके बारे में हमने ऑलरेडी बातें किया है, यू नो, स्पटरिंग, होनिंग, स्ट्रॉपिंग, ऑल द डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ प्रोसेसेस दैट आर यूज्ड in manufacturing those razor blades. Indians didn't know initially. They had to learn from the foreigners.
Right.
And this was RK's value add to the industry in general. क्योंकि वो processes जो हैं, he brought into the country. Now you find them everywhere. See, उन सालों में there was no Gillette. Right? Gillette came later. So RK had already brought these processes in through Wilkinson Sword engineers and whoever so forth. Okay? So now there is not much difference at all.
Right.
The Gillette you use in India today is the same as the Gillette you use abroad.
Right.
There is no difference.
But when you spoke to Mr. Gill as well, Gillette say, तो अभी भी do they manufacture here or
They do.
They do.
Absolutely.
Okay, now they do.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, which they never used to earlier. They do manufacture here. I could not tell you कि उनका bulk of manufacturing, you know, कहाँ है.
Got it.
That is probably market dependent, but it is not cost efficient to manufacture outside of India if you are manufacturing for the Indian market.
Of course, right. Naturally, yeah. I mean, because economies of scale as well, मतलब बैठ ही नहीं पाएगी अगर आप especially import करोगे, because that will come also in a different category of the segment for duties as well.
बिल्कुल.
Naturally.
And also the other very important thing to note is कि पुराने ज़माने में there were sort of three main sources of razor blade steel: Sandvik, British Steel, and Hitachi Metal in Japan.
Right.
You know, this is like in the starting days. So in order to provide that best quality product, you had to import these if you wanted that premium product.
Right.
So this was a big struggle for RK because this is how he started. All of the Malhotras were importing. And you, as you can imagine, agar import per aap dependent hai, again, that's going to affect, you know, your price, right, of your end product. And this is another reason why RK really wanted to bring the steel rolling process to India. So, jo aaj the biggest supplier of steel strip in India is Jindal. Okay, but this was not the case starting out.
Okay, interesting. So जब भी मतलब उनके भाइयों को भी पता चला that Supermax और even Topaz, for example, Gillette को अगर उससे खरीदनी है, तो तभी के टाइम पे did they try to intervene? Did they try to say कि okay, this should not happen and we can possibly sell to you guys?
There was a lot of conflict.
Okay.
There was a lot of conflict. In fact, even as a precursor to the days that Gillette was trying to come in, what was happening was price wars in the market. The reason I've mentioned do teen baar ke RK was always strapped for cash. The reason is because he was not able to increase the price of his Supermax because what he called A group, he called his brothers A group and he called himself B group. He will always be the respectful traditionalist, even in a contentious situation, you know. So he said A group ke brands, jo bhi hai, they're pricing them very low, but they're also low quality. Mine is a higher quality product, and his export companies were very keen that he raise the price of Supermax locally and not be dependent upon money coming from exports.
Right.
You know, but the reason he couldn't do it or wouldn't do it, he said, ye to easier said than done. How am I going to compete in the Indian market if my Supermax is at a higher price than the competing brands? And Gillette was seeing this. And when Gillette was also negotiating, then, you know, the A group again intentionally tried to do whatever they could to sort of prevent the deal happening between Gillette and RK's organizations. Now, I will not go into kya kiya. But it was kind of crazy tactics.
Right.
One of which was including trying to keep the prices low intentionally. That eventually didn't work. So when Gillette got to understand that there's a big difference in quality and we want RK's blades, then unfortunately, not so nice things, underhanded techniques to try and destroy the quality of Supermax blades in the market. All sorts of things went on, you know, because again, when there were two, I cannot speak for the other players in the market, whether they actually wanted Gillette to buy theirs, but they certainly didn't want Gillette to buy RK.
Right.
Some of this you have to also understand कि ये पंजाबी लोग हैं, पंजाबी family, वो पंजाबी मुछ जो है. There's also a stigma against अगर हमने अपना पूरा धंधा अपने मतलब सेल पर दिया तो हम क्या करेंगे? What will we be known for? Which is you're laughing and I'm laughing with you. I'm laughing with you. You know that I have a love-hate relationship with my heritage.
नहीं ये मतलब I think this has got every business-oriented background family. At some point of time, that legacy in terms of difference of opinion हमेशा होता ही है, because always the younger generation will try to bring in a very process-driven, process-driven output, so that everything is compartmentalized and you don't have to get into day-to-day. But like you rightly said, the earlier generation will always be like, okay, look, I want to have control over things. I want to get into this. I want to look over this. I want to look over this, and all of these things then need to report to me, which is a very different style of management as
बिल्कुल.
compared to what you see. So that's the reason why I laugh, because there are days I have that conversation inside internally as well.
Yes.
But yes, I do get that mindset. But coming to this conversation, of course, between the brothers, yes. What were the other, apart from the two brands from, one is of course two Topazes, then Supermax, दूसरे लोकल ब्रांड्स वो टाइम पे मतलब क्या थे जिन्होंने जो भी मतलब थोड़े से जैसे कैसे गए names थे to be reckoned with or known?
So Dilip Dhanukar had started with Hind Blades. Eventually, he had other ones in the market as well. There was Swing. Swing was acquired. There was Erasmic, which was a foreign brand also, with the local Indian sort of counterpart. Hindustan Lever had tried. Brook Bond had tried a blade at one point. Wilkinson Sword was eventually acquired by Gillette. So was Schick. So then Gillette became sort of the main, eventually the main player in the market. Abhi though it's quite a different scene. You have Gillette, you also have the Bombay Shaving Company.
Yes, of course.
Which is
grooming company.
Yes, Bombay Grooming Company, exactly. So you have a very different scenario today.
I understand. Right. Can you tell us, like, from economies of scale, how does a shaving blade manufacturer actually make money?
Economies of scale.
Yeah.
Again, it is commanding that distribution.
Okay.
It is really about commanding that distribution, because this is the double-edged blade versus the twin systems, the twin track. What started off, I should say, as twin track and is now triple, quadruple. Those are higher priced for a certain sector of the market. So it's almost impossible to have economies of scale, in that product. Not to mention the fact that it's not for everybody. Okay, so economies of scale is for that double-edged blade.
Okay.
जो बाबर अभी तक इस्तेमाल करते हैं, right? And the whole idea is to manufacture at as much as you can to feed those sectors of the market. So RKs and the Malhotras in general, what they tried to do was to have factories in states or regions of the country where the government was offering manufacturing and tax incentives, and to try and build those into their largest volume production units.
Okay.
So starting out, when he started, he only had Thane, which was not feasible at all because of license restrictions. So uske baad Hyderabad, uske baad he went north to places like Baddi and outside of Chandigarh and in Himachal and so forth. So economies of scale to produce at large volumes in those places, and then also have your steel processing units, rolling mills and stuff nearby also in those states.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
Then when it, as I said, it comes to the distribution, not having just the centralized distribution, but local, in all these different, what he had developed were 5 zones of the country. Right. So you have to have your sales depots, matlab, in each zones, which then becomes your hub, jaise bolte hain, for distribution into those zones.
I understand. At its peak, मतलब क्या volume था जो Supermax produce करता था?
At its peak, 5 billion blades in 80 plus countries.
5
billion.
Wow.
जैसे मैंने कहा,
annually.
Wow. This was the largest volume of blades produced in the world. Wow. By volume.
And ये एक्सपोर्ट करने का जो आइडिया था बेसिकली वो पहले से टोपाज भी होता था या बाद में? ओके, तो वो आइडिया बेसिकली कहाँ से जनरेट हुआ?
वो आइडिया मतलब वो लाइसेंस राज था उन दिनों में, and H.L. Malhotra, who was my grandfather, my late grandfather, who उन्होंने ही फंड किया था ये सब बिजनेस. Okay, so he was the funder, and he was living abroad,
right,
in Europe, in the UK, and उस हिसाब से Malhotras had a certain amount of exposure abroad, and so they started doing exports to mostly the African countries initially, and then दूसरे countries भी. So that idea of export had started in the late 60s itself, late
Right.
60s, early 70s, around that time frame. In the decade of the 1970s, जैसे मैंने कहा था, Topaz was born by 1973. It was the number one blade in India. In the latter part of the 1970s, all Malhotra brothers, VP and SN and RK, were primarily living abroad. And I would argue a little bit unfocused. You know,
Okay.
it was a bugaboo with RK क्योंकि he was the kind of man जो he always wanted to stay at his center of gravity, but for one reason or the other, he was abroad a lot in those
Right.
days. So the idea was, let's make use of this time. So that's when the abroad business really picked up as well.
Understand.
And then later on, RK's, when he broke from his brothers, he had two sons. RK had two sons. One of them stayed abroad and sort of built up, a lot of those, foreign businesses, foreign sales, and so forth as well.
Understand, right. So, and eventually, मतलब अगर आप ये breakdown समझा सके कि जब भी Gillette का भी खरीदना kind of veto हुआ, so then why was that manufacturing and all of that thing separate? क्योंकि doesn't it make sense to kind of have one holding company, and inside that holding company जब भी आपकी दूसरी businesses हैं, तो why would that get vetoed? Were they not partners from internally from the family, or were they from outside? If you don't mind me asking, because ये काफी interesting है to find out कि क्यों ये veto हुआ. Because in hindsight अगर मैं सोचूं कि आज के तारीख में a primary player from the shaving manufacturing industry trying to acquire a brand, it's just logicless to not sell. And जो भी मतलब I don't think so, जो मैंने research की है, मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो 100% acquisition था. Was it not 49-50%? Was it minor or majority stake, if I'm not mistaken?
With Actis, with the private equity?
Right.
Yes, correct. You're right.
Right. है ना?
Yes.
And Gillette के साथ में it was outright.
It was outright. It would have been, that was the proposal.
100%.
Yes.
Okay. So then why was that, if you can just break that down for us?
आप बिल्कुल सही बोल रहे हैं, in that there was no holding company which held all of these different assets under one central organization.
Right.
They were all separate companies. Indian manufacturing was separate. Export was totally separate.
Right.
So although they were partners and family partners, it was not, and it was one organization. If you're looking from the outside, it was actually a lot of separate companies. And for reasons of family dissonance, it just never got that way. Didn't work out.
Well, that's a shame.
It's a huge shame. I think it's a shame.
Yeah. No, I mean, in general as well, because it would be just such great, how would I say, kaise matlab, a befitting end to something which is a great legacy and a heritage. Because, as I said, कि हम अभी स्वदेशी आत्मनिर्भरता ये सब बात करते हैं.
बिल्कुल.
And at its peak, if you're doing 5 billion units globally, I mean, that's a big number,
Bilkul.
That means you're not just, you've not just successfully done something, you've built a brand, you are thriving, you're growing, that brand is now recognizable globally. So, I mean, that's, yeah.
And this was the life work, if I may say, of R.K. Malhotra, the Ace of Blades. This is exactly what he wanted. He wanted his blade, which was his child, his wife, his lover, the only thing that he cared for was that double-edged blade. People be damned. Family jo bhi. Not exactly, but it was the blade. That was the purpose of his life.
The obsession.
Yeah. The obsession and beyond obsession. And he wanted that to last well after his lifetime, which that's the part that is a shame, because for me it was a question of, like I said, अपने इतिहास के लिए ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण कहानी है.
Right.
That to me cannot just get lost in the annals of time. This is the reason that I wrote this book. लोग बोलते हैं, what a wonderful tribute to your father. I didn't write it as a tribute. Or not to him, but to Indian manufacturing history, and specifically the FMCG sector, and specifically razor blade industry.
Understand.
That's the tribute.
Right.
Because 3 हफ्ते पहले अगर आपने कोई गूगल सर्च किया इंटरनेट पर, you would have seen nothing except some of those lawsuits of Topaz and things like that.
Right.
But now all of a sudden there's a flood of information about R.K. Malhotra, the Ace of Blades, the king of blades, the pioneer of the razor blade industry, because of the book. But I'm glad, because for me that was my purpose, to put his truth, and not just his personal truth, but the truth of the blade brands of India.
Industry.
This is what this country has to offer, had to offer, and what he had to offer to it.
Understand. Through your eyes, what do you think, or at least in those times, both then and now, what do you think about your father's legacy?
It's very hard for me to wholly express what I think about it, because his legacy is the story as I see it, which is why perhaps it has fallen into my hands. We are a very traditional Punjabi family जिनमें लड़कियों को कुछ नहीं दिया जाता है with a view to business. It's just not even part of the Malhotra ethos.
Even today?
Even today. Even today. You know, so I grew up with this, and I was not one of these feminists who was fighting for it, because I knew that's going to be a waste of energy for me. So बहुत लोग बोलते थे, why don't you fight for your right? But there's no right to fight for. I have 3 elder female cousins who didn't really help me out by sort of not doing anything themselves. You know, nobody wanted it, so there was nothing to be taken. But RK wanted his legacy to be the blades. I, in my adult life, became a storyteller. I was a journalist pehle, then a writer, uske baad, and of all the stories that I have written, fiction, non-fiction, historical fiction, jo bhi hai, this one I was obsessive about. All of them I'm obsessive about, don't get me wrong. But this one I also knew...
Close to your heart.
Yes, close to my heart, but even more than close to my heart, it's like I said, it's a coming-of-age story for every single Indian man who shaved with those products for 60 out of the 84 years of his life. And what does an Indian man do when he comes of age? He shaves. It's a rite of passage. So how could this story not be out there for the world? See, when you're a storyteller, you may be writing the story, but is it your story? You can say, yes, it's my story, and this is. But it's everybody else's story. And once you put it out there, it's no longer mine or just mine. Right? This is a story that, to me, it belongs to India, to Indian history, is make in India, is made in India, past, present, and future. You know, so this to me is the legacy. What is ironic is जो R.K. Malhotra सोचते थे कि ये blade जो है ये ही होगा मेरा legacy, लेकिन उनका legacy क्या रहा? It's the story. And even though the daughter doesn't have a place in the business, she is the storyteller, bringing the legacy to the forefront.
I understand. What's the stage of the business today? Are the brands still operating now? Or have the brands like shut shop, closed business?
Unfortunately, they have shut shop and closed business. In the last days of his life, RK was predicting this. The last time I met him, when I got about 14 and a half hours of tape for my book, which became my primary source material for writing it, वो बोलते थे अभी दिन पता नहीं कितने दिन रह गए. He would do the mathematics. कितने हफ्ते रह गए, अभी 20 दिन में ये होने वाला है, 3 हफ्तों में ये होने वाला है, 2 महीनों में ये होने वाला है. And we would not take him seriously at that point. चलो ठीक है, बूढ़ा है, he's forgetting things. But he knew that day was coming, and almost like a jyotish, it happened that way. You see, what happened was Actis private equity company, cash injection, they took over the business. Then they threw out the family members, diluted everybody down, hired people, Hindustan lever se. But there is a big difference. See, Supermax, when it was sold to Actis, was very much a wholesale company. And the ex-employees who I had interviewed really validated this, especially one conversation with Mr. Sushil Khot, who was, running the international marketing. He has since then passed away. but I have his tape saying this. He said, it's a wholesale product. And therein lies the difference between a product like Supermax and anything put out by Hindustan Lever. Hindustan Lever doesn't have what they call a sales organization. Those are not salespeople, they are account executives, right? You're just placing your order for soap and shampoo or jo bhi hai, right? But over here, it's different. I have to actually sell you those stockists and dealers. It's not an automatic relationship. You have to build the trust. You have to keep the trust. You know, and there was a lot of work that still needed to be done to transfer Supermax from being a wholesale product into something like a Hindustan Lever type product. That is what the new owners or the new manager, not owners, the new owners and also the Supermax management perhaps did not understand.
Right.
Which is why the company fell to pieces. And this RK was in tears in the last years of his life seeing this happen.
Right. Yeah. Naturally, I think वो होगा भी because जब भी आपने कंपनी अपने blood, sweat और time से बनाई है, खड़ी की है, and then when you obviously are out from it, and also when you see it going down to, I mean, when it's going to shut shop, तो हमेशा वो एक I mean, it's unnatural कि एक entrepreneur को वो देख के मतलब ठीक लगे. So
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
तो मैं मतलब I completely understand from that perspective. Great. Thank you so much, Reenita, for this wonderful whatever conversation. I hope आपको मजा आया.
बिल्कुल मजा आया, बिल्कुल मजा आया. इन बातों के बारे में बात करना और आपके शो पर गेस्ट होना. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Actually, I hope कि ये माध्यम से बहुत सारे हमारे दर्शकों को भी पता चले कि कितनी इंटरेस्टिंग और फाइनल नुआंसेस है ये कॉन्वर्सेशन में, बिकॉज आई थिंक ये कॉन्वर्सेशन से टेक अवे खाली ये नहीं है कि हमारे पास एक बहुत ही बढ़िया मैन्युफैक्चरिंग टैलेंट है, नॉट जस्ट इन दिस इंडस्ट्री, बट ऑल्सो आई थिंक देयर आर मेनी टेक अवेज ऑफ व्हाट अ एंटरप्रेन्योर शुड ऑल्सो डू, you know, the do's and don'ts as such, from that perspective, and I hope they enjoy this. Great. Best of luck for your book. Also, for everybody who's watching, The Ace of Blades is out. It is available, of course, on Amazon. आप order कर सकते हैं अपनी book. And yes, please हमें comments में बताइए कि आपको ये episode कैसा लगा. Great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.